Now I've got a really simple pattern for you today and not a lot of history on it, and I have gotten enough people asking to hear the hogtail story, so let me tell that one real quick before we get into the tie. So it's about 1980. Imagine 3 elementary school kids growing up in the country in Georgia. It's me, Frazier, and Mike. Now, Frazier had a big garden at his house, and on the back side of his garden, a big fence. On the other side of the fence, the big hog pen. Now, we used to like going out there and just picking food from the garden and going out and giving it to the hogs. And I remember this one day, we went out and pulled up some turnips. Just, big purple turnips. Big, huge things, greens and all. Just feed them to the hogs. So after we fed the hogs a handful of turnips, one of them was backed up to the fence, and Frazier says, "Hey, do you guys want to hear a pig squeal?" And we're like, "Well, yeah, of course we do." So he says, all you have to do is bite its tail. Now, this is not a tiny pig. This is really a hog, probably 500 pounds. It's the kind of animal you get bacon and ham out of. And its tail is not a cute little curly thing. It's probably that big around. Now, it is curly, but, when you stretch it out, it's probably this long. So Mike says, okay, why not? He's got that big hog backed up against the fence. He gets down there on his knees, pulls that tail out, pulls it straight, and then clamps down on it just as hard as he can. Now, we're all sitting there waiting for this hog to squeal, and 2 surprising things happen. First off, that hog did not squeal at all. If anything, she just grunted and stood up and took off across the field. And then the second unexpected thing that happened was that Mike did not let go of the tail. So within about 2 seconds, he gets dragged through the fence and then probably 40 or 50 feet out there across a pig pen. So this all happens pretty fast. Frazier and I were shocked, had no idea what just happened. We see Mike standing up, bloody and muddy, and by this time figuring out what just happened and crying his head off. And we have no idea what to do other than get him out of that pig pen, and we got to go tell Frazier's mom. Now, Mike did not live this story down for a long time, partly because he had dark hair and then a chunk of his eyebrow was missing, and then he had a scar on the top of his head from getting dragged through a fence. So what does this story have to do with today's pattern? Well, not really much, other than that Frazier and Mike were 3 buddies that used to fish in these farm ponds, and this pattern is going to be a great one for some warm water ponds, maybe some panfish, crappie, smallmouth bass. It's going to be a good fly for that. Now, I found this one in the Federation of Fly Fishers Pattern Encyclopedia. It was tied by Gene Stutzman of Oregon. I don't know if he created the pattern, but we talked about him before. He did create one called the Bridge 99 Emerger. We tied that a couple months ago. So I think you're going to like this pattern. It's a fairly generic, just warm water type streamer. You could mix up, tie in any colors you want. I'd probably keep the black chenille body with the silver rib, but change the tail and wing to whatever you'd like. But it's a fun one, easy to tie. I think you're going to like it. Let's give it a shot. So there we go in the vise. Just a simple little pattern called the crappie darter. Now, I love little flies like this. They're so easy to tie and they can be so effective. Now, I'm going to go pretty small. This is a size 8. It is a streamer hook. I'm going to go ahead and pinch this barb right here. You could tie it a little bigger, I'm sure, but I wouldn't go much bigger for this, certainly if you're going to fish it for panfish or crappie. So let's get that in there right there. I'm going to use black thread, and I am keeping it at a 70 denier. You could certainly go a little bit bigger, but a rule of thumb I usually do is I keep the thread as small as I can get away with. Now for the tail, just a pretty small tuft of white calftail. That looks about like enough right there, but take a look at this. When you just look at the tip, you've got an awful lot right there. So what I'll do in a case like this, I'll grab just the tip of what I want, and then I'll try to pull out some of that real short hairs right there, and that will thin it out without taking any of the length out. So I should still have enough for a tail right there, but I have effectively made the clump that I'm tying in just a little bit thinner. So let's do a pinch wrap or 2 right here and see what we've got. Trying to keep it on top. And that's a good 3 or 4 wraps right there. And it looks like it's on the top, but what you can do, and I'll show you, even though I don't think I need to right here, just lift it up, put a wrap right up under it, and that will help keep it from spinning around on your hook. So before I bind that in, I'm gonna just try to lift it up at about 30 or 45 degree angle, put my scissors in here parallel to the hook, and then just try to cut it, get a little taper right there, and that will just help you get a smoother transition from that clump of calftail to the hook. Now we do have a big, thick chenille body, so it's not a bad thing necessarily if you have a big lump there, but anytime you can avoid a lump, it probably will make your body look just a little bit bigger, or a little bit better. Not bigger, don't necessarily want it bigger. Okay, so I am using, this is a size 14 Mylar tinsel right here. Just this stuff right here. I tied one of them with a size 12, and I think it was just a little bit too thick of a rib. So I stepped it down to the 14. Now I do have a medium chenille in black, and I've stripped off just a little bit, leaving a little bit of that thread core right there. Let's catch that in. And I don't want, I want my first wrap to be the one that's laying the chenille. So I think we got it right there. And what some people will do, they'll put the first wrap behind that rib. And that's up to you if you want to, if you think it's going to look better. I don't think it necessarily does, and I'm not going to in this case. I'm just going to wrap this thing up, touch and turns till I get all the way up to my head. Okay, 2 or 3 wraps right there should secure that. We'll snip it, get rid of that fuzz. Another couple wraps just to really bind it in. Now I'm going to counter wrap this rib. And up to you how close together you want to put these. It just really depends how much flash you want. I don't want a ton of flash, but I'm putting the rib in for a reason. I do want some. Okay, what you can do after you've caught it in with a couple wraps, just fold it back and a couple more. That way you don't risk it unraveling on you. Now for the wing, just a tuft of yellow calftail. And this one, I'm going to recommend using a little bit less than you think you need. See, I've got that right there, and I want it to go probably to the bend of the hook. So if I grab it, look at it, I've got a lot of fluff right there, so I'm going to do that same thing, just kind of hold it in the middle and pull some of this out to really thin it out without shortening it. And I forgot, I want to put some wax on right here. Just might help this a little bit tackier of thread. It might help it hold on a little better. Okay, so I've got my wing right there to the bend of the hook. And what I'm going to do right here, I'm going to just treat this like I would bucktail. I'm going to put one wrap just around the hair, and then do a little pinch wrap around the hair and the hook. Not real tight yet, but let's do a couple wraps and then make sure we're still coming off the top. Okay, I think we are right there. So now let's just catch it in tight. Several tight wraps right here. I think I've got enough wraps on there that I can reach in here and cut this off in one snip. If you need to, take a few snips, but I think I can get away with one whack right there. Now, this is where your 70 denier thread comes in handy. You can spend quite a few wraps right here cleaning up this head without risking your head getting too big. I mean, you can still make too big of a head with 70 denier thread, but it's easier to keep it manageable with the smaller stuff. Okay, I think we're fine. I got a little bit of yellow showing in those thread wraps there, but I'm not going to sweat it. I don't want my head to get much bigger than that, so I'm going to go ahead and whip finish it. Now just take a look. Do we have any cleanup before we put our head cement on? Nope, we don't. I think it's a simple, yet should be a very effective pattern. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.